Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. A small town in North Waziristan, Darpa Dande Kel. Suddenly, a bang, and a man named Massoud is dead. This has put into motion over these last days blame-shifting accusations, defeats, and concerns in Pakistan, Islamabad, in Afghanistan, and Kabul. Not in Washington, although this is part of the moving story now, as Washington has determined that ISAF is withdrawing from Afghanistan, and what is behind is Al-Qaeda and its kindred of Cain. One of them, no longer with us, Hakimullah Massoud. You know him as the man who sponsored the attempted mass murder of Americans in May of 2010 here in Times Square, about a 20-minute walk, 5-minute walk from where I am. And also a man responsible claiming credit for the murder of 7 CIA agents in a raid along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. Bill Roggio of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies and Tom Joscelyn of the FDD, they keep the Long War Journal joined to comment on the death of Hakimullah Massoud. Bill, I begin with you. First, I want to confirm that we've got a video or a statement by the Taliban or by Al-Qaeda that he's dead. That always confirms it. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, John. Yeah, we do have a confirmation. Their top spokesman said he's dead, and also Umar Media, which is their propaganda arm, actually released an image of him just before he was buried, and it's him.
Tom, Hakimullah Massoud was part of the Pakistani Taliban, and those devils have attacked Pakistan as much as the U.S. forces along the border. My understanding is that Hakimullah Massoud was one of the pieces in place that Karzai or Kabul was counting on. Is that true, and is this a surprising turn in the so-called negotiations?
Well, both American and Afghan officials, mainly on background, but some of them named, even on the Afghan side, have said that the Karzai government was negotiating with the Pakistani Taliban and Hakimullah Massoud's chief lieutenant, a guy named Latif Masood, who was captured by American forces in October. And both the capture of Latif Masood and the killing of Hakimullah Massoud have elicited very strong responses from the Afghan government, which unfortunately has been negotiating with them sort of to basically with the idea that they would be able to work with the Pakistani Taliban as a proxy against the Pakistani state, because the Pakistani state uses so many jihadist groups as proxies against Afghanistan. Now, this is really disastrous for our policy in the region, because the Pakistani Taliban is one of the closest al-Qaeda allied organizations on the planet.
And the Pakistani Taliban right now, without Massoud, are they a less violent organization? Was he a significant player, in your opinion, Tom? Because he popped off a lot these last years. He's almost been like the glamour Taliban compared to all the rest of them.
Well, he was very significant, but as Bill and I have pointed out a number of times, these guys have a deep bench. And, some of the press reporting that came out, for example, right after his death, indicated that 60 members of their Shura Council got together, convened to sort of appoint an interim emir for the organization. And if you just think about that for a second, 60 guys, and that's not the entire Shura Council, but 60 members got together to convene to talk about who could replace him within a couple of days of his being killed. I think that says a lot about how many people they've got making decisions for the organization. And it's not based on the cult of personality. It's not based just on him and his decision-making, that they have an actual infrastructure.
Bill, I read from your reporting at the FDD that we've been to this village before. In fact, this is a replay of the July 2nd hit. What do we know about the drones, the Predators, how they did it?
Yeah, you're talking about the strike that killed Hakimullah.
Yes.
Yeah. Apparently he was leaving a mosque to head to a nice, comfortable villa that he had nearby. He was holding a meeting at a mosque. Unclear as to what he was talking about. U.S. forces tracked him, and then his home, by the way, in where his wife and kids stayed, and apparently he was there for staying here for quite a while, was only about a mile from a large Pakistani military garrison in North Waziristan. Kind of brings to mind a situation where it's not like Osama bin Laden living close to a military base or military university right before he was being killed. It almost makes you wonder if the Pakistanis may have knew exactly where he was and did nothing about it.
How did we know he was there at that moment, Bill? I mean, it's, Afghanistan and Pakistan are vast, and a drone is one little trigger pull.
It's difficult for us to know without looking at the actual intelligence. I suspect that the capture of Latif Masood may have yielded some information.
Who's that, Bill? Who's that?
Latif, he was the Pakistani Taliban commander that U.S. forces captured in Afghanistan in October, the ones that the Afghans were supposedly negotiating with.
In other words, we think this is good intelligence gained from one of our POWs.
Right, and now keep in mind, as we start to draw down in the region, we're going to get less and less intelligence like this.
Tom, Massoud is gone. The threats now are routine against the United States, against Pakistan, against Afghanistan. Should we pay attention to these threats? Is the Pakistani Taliban a transnational threat?
Well, they are. I mean, they were behind, as you mentioned, the onset that they were responsible for the May 2010 attempted attack. They also have a presence in Syria. They have a presence elsewhere. I think the big thing to stress here is they are clearly part of the global jihadist network, which is led by Al-Qaeda. They are, by their own admission, very closely allied with Al-Qaeda, and they have thousands of fighters under their command. And they are fighting not only in Pakistan and Afghanistan, but clearly have the capacity to sort of execute attacks elsewhere. And the killing of Hakimullah Massoud doesn't instantaneously reduce that threat. It's certainly something that disrupts their leadership. It disrupts their operation, their organizational decision-making for the short term, but that's something they can quickly overcome.
Bill, the CIA lost 7 people, and Hakimullah boasted about it. Did the CIA comment after this shoot?
There has been no official comment from the CIA, but you know that they're quite happy. This is certainly a bit of revenge. Hakimullah gloated over killing a senior operative or senior CIA commander and several others. They were trying to get intelligence to track down Ayman al-Zawahiri, who's now the emir of the Al-Qaeda, and basically Al-Qaeda and the Taliban set them up, and Hakimullah sent in that suicide bomber. So yeah, this is it's revenge is a dish best served cold, and Hakimullah certainly got his dish served to him.
Tom, we're going to move to Syria next. Does this disturb the status quo in Islamabad that Hakimullah Massoud, said to be negotiating, is now hit with a drone strike, and drones have become very sensitive in the Pakistan government?
I don't think it disturbs the status quo. I would assume that the Pakistani government probably knew something about what was going on here anyway, because the negotiations between the Afghan government and the Pakistani Taliban were said to have been going on for many months. This wasn't something that just popped up. And even if they didn't know about it, the Pakistani Taliban has sort of been this wedge issue for the Pakistani government. It's interesting that this organization sort of exists in the middle of all other organizations that are clearly sponsored by the Pakistani state, and yet is turned against elements of the Pakistani state. So there's really this wheels within wheels problem that's always, the best way to describe Pakistan. So it's not really even clear, as Bill pointed out, exactly what they know or don't know about the Pakistani Taliban's operations.
And Bill, one more time, we killed Hakimullah how many times before we finally killed him? Was he dead 3-4 times, stretching back several years?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and count, but it was at least 4 times he's died. I think there was 3 reports of deaths in drone strikes. One of the times he died in several different drone strikes, but everyone counted him as dead. And he's also supposedly killed in a leadership secession meeting with the guy who actually became his deputy and was quite chummy with.
And Hakimullah Massoud will now have a successor, as he succeeded. He succeeded Batullah. Was that right, Bill? Batullah was. Yeah.
Batullah Massoud was the founder of the movement of the Taliban in Pakistan. He served for 2 years before being killed. Hakimullah got about 4 years and a couple months.
Okay. We're going to move to Syria next, because transnational threat must start with the Syrian civil war. But Hakimullah Massoud is gone. The threats are real. And the Pakistan Taliban, which tried to mass murder in Times Square, is a transnational threat that means New York. I'm John Batchelor.